Hey, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to talk about Firefight. We're going to continue our Enforcers deep dive, and today we're going to talk about Commanders. We're going to look at all the command options for the Enforcers and their potential retinue and bodyguard units, however you want to call them. And that's just the extra models that you can take inside of a command unit. We're going to look at those. We're going to look at each unit individually, and we're going to look at their auras or orders and how those auras or orders could be used. And then, we're going to do this in the same order that they appear in the list builder. And then we're also going to do, just like we did with the troops, we're going to do a little bit of like a ranking system at the end. And as always, I'm going to give you my disclaimer. My ranking system shouldn't be viewed as like the end-all be-all. It's really based off of the fact that I tend to play a more aggressive melee-centric playstyle when I play games like this. And so if you don't agree with me, by all means, don't agree with me. Let me know what you like, and let me know if I get anything wrong in the comments. Speaking of, I appreciate, real quick, want to give a shout out to everybody in the Firefight communities that have reached out or have liked and subscribed my videos. That does help my channel grow, and I do appreciate that. So if you're watching this and you like Firefight and you haven't subscribed, just hit that subscribe button for me. Thank you. And then before we dig into the video, I do want to give a big shameless plug. I do get ad revenue on YouTube, but I also like to throw out some Amazon affiliate links occasionally. So if you like Firefight and are looking to get into the game, there's going to be an Amazon affiliate link for the 2-player starter set that features the Enforcers and the Marauders, as well as an affiliate link for Command Dice. So the 2-player starter set does give you everything you need to play. It's going to give you, it'll have the rule book, it'll have Command Dice, all the models you need to play for Enforcers, and then also Marauders. So it's a good box. That's actually how I got started in the game, and it's a fantastic box. So that being said, links in the description. Thank you for the support. Let's move on to what we're all here for. We're going to start with the Pathfinder Lieutenant. Again, we're going in the same order they appear in the list builder, and then we will rank them afterward. He does have Inspiring, Scout, Small Unit 1, and Tactician. The Tactician is a single black die. That didn't transfer over. When I first did these, I thought I was going to list all of the unit abilities, and then I realized I didn't really need to. So the structure or format will kind of change as we progress, and that's okay. I just wanted to give you the heads up. The command order for the Pathfinder Lieutenant is target acquired. It's resolved instantly for 1 command point. You mark an enemy unit within line of sight as tagged, and then until the end of the round, all shoot actions against the tagged unit by units with tag pistols or tag rifles get +1 to hit and weight of fire 1. So reminder that weight of fire 1 is you get to reroll 1 die when you roll the hit roll. Obviously, if it was weight of fire 2, you would re-roll 2 dice. So you re-roll you're allowed to re-roll a number of dice equal to what your weight of fire rating is. Whew! Homie's got a base loadout of a tag pistol, which is just 12 inches, 1 die, AP 1. It does have vicious, which is re-roll 1s on the damage die. So that, again, if you're coming to 40k, there's no wound roll. It's really just hit and saves. So this is basically like re-roll 1s on saves, but you're rolling your saves. Again, if you're coming from 40k, the easiest way to look at it would be you roll hit and you roll wound. There's no armor save, damage is done. That damage die is almost like a wound roll. And I'm only trying to break that down because I know a big portion of my viewership or my subscriber base are 40k players. So that's kind of why I try to draw these analogs. So it's re-rolling 1s on the second roll to confirm damage, basically. And those are not optional. The vicious is not optional. You have to re-roll them. And it does have marksman, which is re-roll 1s on your hit roll as well. He has a 2-die assault weapon. There's nothing special about it. You could give the tag rifle for 5 additional points. That does make it 24 inches, but other than that, it's the exact same profile. And then Crypsis cloaks for +10 points. And then the retinue, those are the extra models you could take in the command unit. You could take up to 4 Pathfinders with a tag rifle. And those, like I said, 24 inches, 1 die, AP 1, vicious, shooting, and marksman. I'm going to put a card up in, like, wherever they show up. I'm just kind of pointing randomly. We're going to put a card in And that's going to let you know, that's where I broke down troops, so we can kind of talk about in that video how I feel about Pathfinders. It's worth watching if you've not seen it. I will say at 50 points, it's a pretty cheap command unit to be able to put on the table. It does only give you one black command die, but really that black die is not why you take the Pathfinder Lieutenant, because there's just better command units if you're taking them for the die. The command order really only affects Pathfinder units, which honestly it's just things that have tag pistols or rifles, not tag cannons. So it only affects those tag weapons. It doesn't affect anything else, even if it's tag. And really what I think the Pathfinder Lieutenant is for is you take it for this order, and then you're building your force specifically around Pathfinders. That's kind of how I see it. It's more for like a theming force. I could be wrong. And that's not to say it wouldn't be competitively viable or good. It's just, it doesn't seem to be kind of, I can put this on the table and it'll affect my whole army. It's, I'm going to put this on the table to affect these specific units. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm simply saying that's how I interpret it. If you're gonna bring the Lieutenant, I think it's worth bringing a couple extra Pathfinders. The volume of fire you get from tag rifles is very low, but they will benefit from their own order, because you give the order, you resolve the order, and then you get to do your actions. So they would benefit from their own order, and that'll only just serve to give you more Pathfinders to benefit from that order. So again, worth bringing extra Pathfinders if you're bringing the Lieutenant. Plus, they're fairly cheap. They're still 2 hit points. To me, you take the cloak. There's no reason not to in almost any situation unless you just simply don't have points. But to me, 10 points is worth it to give you stealthy, coupled with, you know, like if you have cover, stuff like that. So stealthy is -1 to hit against ranged attacks. That's effectively what it does. And, you know, you take the cloak, even if you don't bring extra Pathfinders, it does have, I think it's small unit 1, which would stack with stealthy, stack with cover, so all these things could stack up so that Homeboy could be -3 to hit. You know, so that's one of those, like, to me, 10 points for the cloak, worth it. 5 points for the rifle, worth it. Pathfinders are a ranged unit, so there's no reason not to bring the rifle, in my opinion, unless you're literally just taking it by itself for the forward observer ability. You know, if you're just taking it as a lone model and you're just going to kind of poke it out and spot things, then maybe you don't take the rifle. But Pathfinders are a shooting unit, and there's no reason not to make them shoot better. We're going to move on from there to the forward observer. This is an interesting one. Anti-grav, inspiring, scout, all the standard stuff that you get. It is stealthy baked in, and it does have tactician 2 black dice, command order, first strike, and it's an aura, and it's 2 command points, and all friendly units within 12 may add 6 inches to any ranged weapon, excluding weapons with it burns keyword, which makes sense, when performing a steady aim action. We're going to dig into the order in just a little bit. I think it's situationally a very good order, but it's one you have to build around, and we'll kind of touch on that later. His base loadout is going to be a Genling laser rifle. It's 2 dice with trademark. The laser rifle is awesome. You know, there's a lot of flexibility that goes in with the laser rifle. There's other orders you can do to make the laser rifle better. But given that it can only take Pathfinders, there's not really a reason to use those orders. Energy Gauntlet, it's 2 dice, AP2 seismic. I love gauntlets. I think they're really solid weapons. I don't know that they're worth it on the forward observer, but you can spend 10 points to give it a sniper rifle. And really, it just comes down to what do you want out of your forward observer unit. I think if you give it a sniper rifle, you take a couple more snipers with it. I think if you leave it with a laser rifle, you take maybe a couple Pathfinders with it. But it's one of those where there's no reason to give it a sniper rifle unless you're bringing more sniper rifles. Again, if they're just sitting still, they can benefit from that order, and you can have 42-inch range sniper rifles. And the snipers are 34 points a model, which is kind of pricey, but like I said, 42-inch range sniper rifle, your opponent, unless there's something extremely durable, they're not going to be wanting to just like run their units out into the open. You know, if they have to risk losing, like if a person playing Plague, for example, has to risk losing their heavy machine gun or their grenade launcher or anything like that, you know, being able to choose what models get killed could kind of help suppress, for lack of a better word, those enemy infantry that are trying to come up the table at you. For 75 points, you do get, like I said, just a standard Enforcer profile. It does provide 2 black command dice, which is pretty good for the points. You got 3 hit points, armor 6, 2 black command dice. I think the command aura alone is worth taking it. It's not locked to non-vehicles and it's not locked to trademark, but it is locked to steady aim, which is, you know, basically you spend your whole turn to shoot. But there's a lot of interaction there that could get spicy. You know, if you've got Peacekeepers with Dominator rifles and they don't need to move, maybe they're holding down an objective, you can now push those to 24 inches. That's 3 shots per gun at 24 inches at AP1. Those are really good guns. If you've got a Strider with the Polaris cannon, it's now 30-inch range. So it may not even have to move when it benefits from this aura. You know, so it's one of those, it does require positioning, it does require understanding where everything's at, but if you've got a 24-inch range anti-tank gun that's now 30-inch range, there's going to be some matchups where you're now outranging your opponent rather than being the same or being outranged. So again, I think it's situationally good. Missiles go to 42, and missiles are spicy. You know, there's just so many units that could benefit from this buff. Even if you have assault enforcers on an objective, the fact that they could just sit there and now they have 18-inch range pistols, like there's just a lot of interaction there that's really good. You know, you do need to use the steady aim to benefit from it, but like I said, that's a big buff for an army that's generally medium and short range. It pushes them to that medium almost into long range, like kind of just shifts them a little bit. And I think it's a solid take. Again, we're going to dive into it a little deeper at the end when we do our tiering. Honestly, I think the retinue, I'm not sure that you need it. With small unit 1 and stealthy, the FO is going to be -2 to hit inherently, so it should be relatively easy to hide. Maybe you take a couple Pathfinders, but honestly, I think this is a unit that's going to need to move a lot unless you lean into the snipers, because you want to make sure you can put that aura where you need it. So unless you're taking snipers, I just think you take it by itself and you run it around so that you can maximize where that aura can go. The Enforcer Captain, 80 points for an orange die, and then, you know, again, standard Enforcer profile, +1 hit point because it's a commander. Command order for the Council. All friendly non-vehicle units within 15 inches can remove a pin marker. I don't think this is bad. I don't think it's great. It's situationally good. And if pinning is a mechanic that you as a player struggle with, this is a great way to mitigate its effects. If you wait till late turn, you can remove a bunch of pin tokens before you do your nerve check. If you do it relatively early in the turn, you could free up, you know, pin tokens so that you can get multiple actions with your units. So it has play. It's not a bad take. I just don't think it's the best take. I'd honestly consider this like a middle tier kind of ability, and simply because so far in my games, when I've played Enforcers, I've not really had pinning be an issue, and it could just be because of how I play, but I've not run into too many situations where I was like, man, I wish I could have removed that pin token. But again, your experience could be different, so know that if pinning is something that like really puts a hamper on how you interact with the game, it's a good take to help mitigate that. Now, Homie does have an interesting retinue. You can take up to 2 Enforcer operatives with the Genling loadout. He's got the Genling loadout, or she, it doesn't matter. It's got the Genling loadout. You can replace one of them with a medic. And medics are interesting. I've not really used them yet, so I'm not really sold on whether or not they are worth. I think there's probably some situations where you want them. If I remember right, they give their own unit resilient 1, and then they can replace a model. So ultimately, I don't think they're bad. I just haven't played with them enough to be like, yes, this is worth it, or no, it's not. You can take up to 3 Enforcer Defenders, and like I said a couple minutes ago, I already talked about troops. Again, I'll put the card up. It should be around the 5-minute mark. Maybe I'll throw it again here, which is going to be around the 15-minute mark. But they may be actually kind of good in this situation. By themselves, they don't feel like a very good unit. But when you're putting them with a captain or a command unit, that armor 7 actually matters, right? And even just taking 1, the whole unit gets to use armor 7 until that defender dies. And that's just based on the way the words are, the words are worded. I'm not wrong. It's just based on the way the rules are worded. You can use the best armor stat in a mixed unit. They will lose defensible because your keywords don't carry over. But really, you're just maybe taking 1 for the armor buff. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the way mixed units interacts gets changed recently. And that's just based off of a conversation I've had in the Firefight Fanatics, Facebook group. There's been some conversations there, and it sounds like something is going to end up changing at some point, because the defenders are 28 points. But then the defenders, when they're in their own unit, are 28 points. And they actually lose access to all of their normal keywords. So you're paying the same points for a unit that does less. So I don't know if it's just going to be a points adjustment or if the way keywords interact is going to change. But it sounds like there may be a change coming at some point. But again, I don't think it's a terrible take in this specific situation, because you're only talking about 1 model, maybe 2. But they're not worth it to take a whole unit. It does give you a single orange command die, and orange command dice are pretty good. Trademark rifle, again, has the Genling, so it can benefit from most of the orders in the Enforcer retinue, or repertoire, I should say. The command order, like I said, it's situationally good. Again, I've not run into too many situations where I was like, dang, I'm pinned. I wish I could be not pinned. But that doesn't mean I won't, and that doesn't mean other people haven't. I think the bodyguard options are solid. You can take more trademark weapons. You can get potential of 7-up armor. Like I said, the defenders are just a little bit expensive, but we'll see how that goes. The Assault Enforcer Captain, 80 points for a great aura and an orange die. And when I say great aura, I mean this is one of the best Enforcer auras. All non-vehicle units within 9 inches may add 3 inches to any advance or sprint move they make. So as an aura, and only being 9 inches, this means your positioning is going to be important. But adding 3 inches to all your advance or sprints, it's really good for an army that, like I said, I think the way I play them, they have to kind of keep moving. And that gives Assault Enforcers a 15-inch threat range with anti-grav, which is really good. I'm just going to effectively teleport over this wall. I'm just going to jump pack over it and still charge you. And so, it really gives them a nasty threat range. You get to move 9 inches for your base shooty fellas, 15 inches for the bikes. So it just adds a lot of mobility to an army that doesn't necessarily have a ton of mobility inherently. A lot of your mobility with Enforcers comes from the use of your orders. The fact that it has countercharge instead of controlled fire is an awesome charge deterrent. Not that controlled fire isn't, but it's been my experience that people are more likely to charge my regular Enforcers with controlled fire because there's no AP and they're -1 to hit than they are to charge into my assault enforcers with countercharge because we're resolving damage simultaneously and there's no -1 to hit. And it just means that, like, there's a good chance I'm going to win that assault if it's a full squad, unless you just have tons of models. So that's been my experience with countercharge. So again, I think countercharge is very underrated from my conversations I've had so far. It's very undervalued in the Enforcer's toolbox. Definitely worth having. It does have a base loadout of Gendling pistol and wrist blade, which is just the same as the base Assault Enforcer loadout. For 10 extra points, you get phase claws, and I think that's worth it for the captain. You get an extra attack, you lose the pistol, you go up 10 points, but it's an extra attack and you're elite, so you reroll hits of 1 in the fights. Man, and the Assault Enforcers really are just a dedicated melee unit anyway. The fact that they have a pistol just kind of shows that Enforcers are kind of this weird, do a little bit of everything with just a minor specialization. I looked at the retinue and it doesn't make a lot of sense with this unit, and I'm wondering if there's maybe some typos or some sort of errors that need to get cleaned up. The fact that they can take defenders is interesting, and I guess it makes sense, but this is a melee unit. But then the defenders in this unit have a different weapon than the defenders in literally every other unit. Base defenders get shotguns. The defender in the Enforcer Captain retinue gets shotgun, but the defenders in the Assault Enforcer unit get Gendling laser rifles. It just seems kind of strange, and you know, maybe that's intended. It just seems very weird. And honestly, I don't know that that's necessarily worth it, because again, it's effectively a dedicated melee unit. Sure, you can take a laser rifle, and there's nothing wrong with it, but you're spending 28 points to take a laser rifle and get a 7-up armor. Up to 3 Enforcers with the default loadout, which is going to be your wrist blade and your laser pistol, one of which can become a medic. I don't hate wrist blades. They're actually pretty solid for a base melee weapon. I'd like to at least see phase claws be an option for the retinue. And it's weird that it's not, because it's an option for the base unit. It's an option for the captain, but the captain can't have any friends with phase claws. That does seem weird. And maybe it's an oversight, maybe it's not. But overall, I think it's worth to take a couple of Assault Enforcers just to have that charge deterrent. You know, one phase claw isn't enough to make people go, ooh, I don't want to charge that. But maybe a phase claw and a couple wrist blades will make somebody go, ooh, I don't want to charge that, you know? Because the phase claws are only swinging 3 dice. But when you start getting it up to 5, 7, 9, now you're talking like, I'm going to put some real damage out. Like I said, I think the aura is really good. Like, that extra movement is just nutty. You can cover almost 1/3 of the board in one direction and 1/5 of the board in the other. And so it lets units really just like steal objectives, charge things that they normally wouldn't be able to. The increased threat range is worth it to me. Then we have the Jetbike Lieutenant. It's 90 points base for a standard Jetbike profile with an additional hit point, and obviously it brings 2 black command dice. The aura is kind of meh. It's a 6-inch aura of Headstrong. And again, there's nothing wrong with it, but 6 inches means you're basically only giving it to 1 or 2 units in most situations. You know, you're going to torpedo it over to a spot to make sure that Headstrong gets where you want it, and that's going to effectively be it. The Enforcer Captain order, in my opinion, is just better. It's 15-inch range, if I remember right, and then, you know, sure, it doesn't affect vehicles, but at the end of the day, it just guarantees you're removing pin markers. You're not having to roll for them. So it's kind of weird. Maybe if it had a bigger aura, it'd be worth it. I don't know. Like I said, the 2 black command dice is better than no black command dice. So overall, it's not bad. And then the Dominator in Jetbike Assault, and then Dominators, I've said it a million times, I think they're great rifles. You know, the retinue, you can take more Jetbikes, But oddly, when you take more jet bikes, they're 40 points with the lieutenant, but they're 45 points in their own unit. 2 jet bikes is 90 points in their own unit, but an extra jet bike is 40 points. So again, I'm not sure what's up with the discrepancy here. I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know if it's not. It just seems very weird. And then we have the Peacekeeper Captain. Obviously, it's resilient because it's a Peacekeeper. 1 green command eye. Controlled fire. 3 hit points. 7+ armor. 110 points base. Homie's worth it. Homie is worth 110 points. The command order is Firestorm Aura. All friendly units within 12 gain weight of fire 1 and vicious shoot keywords. It makes everything in your army more efficient unless it just doesn't have a gun. So this aura is hands down like an auto take to me just because it makes everything better. Base loadout is the Dominator and the Wrist Blade. It's a 0-point upgrade for Phase Claws, and honestly, especially for the Captain, I would just take the Phase Claws. The Wrist Blade's fine, but again, the Captain getting Phase Claws gives it an additional attack at AP2 and Elite, because the Peacekeeper Phase Claws are AP2. Now, for the Retinue, on the other hand, you can take up to 3 more Peacekeepers, and each one comes with a Dominator and Energy Gauntlet. And that's a fantastic loadout. You know, the gauntlets are AP2, Seismic, 2 attacks. It is a points upgrade to replace them with Phase Claws, but having those Dominators means you're going to be able to take advantage of your controlled fire. So to me, that's 100% worth it. And honestly, depending on how many Peacekeepers you bring, the Captain should have Phase Claws, in my opinion. If you bring 4, right, you can bring 3 Peacekeepers plus the Captain. If you bring 4, you might take 2 with Phase Claws and then 2 without. You do want to make sure you have Dominators if you take, you know, the bodyguard models. And that's just so you can take advantage of controlled fire. Otherwise, you're not using your keyword that you have inherently. Don't get me wrong, all Phase Claws is hilarious, and I would consider doing it just because those things slap, but at the same time, you're forfeiting your ability to use controlled fire, and you're spending more points. So it just seems kind of weird to, not weird, it just doesn't seem very intelligent or good to go that route. You know, and Phase Claws, man, especially on the Peacekeepers being AP2, they are now a threat into basically anything except for things with heavy armor, and even into some of those, like, that's worth the risk. You know, if you've got 3 of them, if you've got 2 boys with gauntlets, 2 boys with Phase Claws, the Phase Claws are going to throw 6 dice, hitting, if you get the charge, like a good charge, you're going to hit on 3s, re-rolling 1s, you know, so you're probably going to get 5 hits on average, maybe 4. And then at AP2, like if you're hitting a Strider, you now need 5s. You know, so of your 5 hits, you're going to get 2.5 hits. Of your 2.5 hits, you're going to get 1 that goes through on heavy. You know, so again, you're going to average a single damage with the Phase Claws. But then if you've got 4 attacks with your gauntlets, you know, you're probably going to average another 1, maybe 2 with the gauntlets. And unless it's just like a melee-centric Strider or something along those lines, there's a good chance you still win that assault then. And then Energy Gauntlets, you know, like I said, when you've got gauntlets, they really become more of an elite killer type of unit, and that just leads into what I just said. But having the Dominators does give them, you know, 3 dice to shoot at, so you can kind of do a little chip damage on hordes and stuff like that. So again, they don't have a bad option. In recap, I think Enforcers have some really good command units. Even the worst command units really have something to offer. And, you know, most of the ones that I would say are bad really just require some sort of theming or list construction to be effective, like the Pathfinder Lieutenant. So let's go ahead and take a look at how I would rank them. We're going to start with the best and work our way down. I think the Peacekeeper Captain is just the best. overall. It buffs almost your entire army. Again, unless you just don't have a gun. It's very resilient. It's just one of those, like, it just makes everything around it better. You have good options with Dominator rifles, Phase Claws. It can be a very versatile unit. Energy gauntlets. Like, you have so many good options for your retinue, for the Peacekeeper Captain. Everything about it is just good. And then you couple it with the fact that it just makes everything around it better. I've yet to play a game without it. And honestly, like, I don't know that I want to. I would much rather keep bringing it, knowing that it interacts the way it does. It also brings a green command die. So homie's always going to give you at least one command point. And so again, it's just, I've never played without this captain. When I did the tournament at Michigan GT, that was the only command unit I had. And at no point was I like, man, I wish I had something else. Or was I like, man, I wish I had more. That one captain was phenomenal the whole tournament. Up next, I think the Assault Enforcer Captain ranks in second place. It's fairly cheap at 80 points. It does give you an orange command die. And like I said, I think it's one of the best orders Enforcers have access to. 3 extra inches of movement and a 9-inch bubble for non-vehicles really gives you a lot of mobility that you wouldn't otherwise have. And like I said, the way I play them, they have to keep moving. We have to keep pushing. And what I mean by that is, and I'll probably do a video kind of explaining that in a lot more detail, and I already have once, but I'll really kind of explain it. I tend to start the game very, very packed in, and then I'm just constantly moving every turn, spreading out. So, you know, for the way I play them, that is just an auto-include for me. You know, like, oh, I can now move 9. There's a good chance I can hit that objective and still shoot you, for example. I do think his retinue is a little underwhelming because there's not really any options, but there's no reason not to take them because, again, countercharge with more attacks is just better than countercharge with less attacks. You know, and like I said, Phase Claws on the Captain are worth it, so I would just take them. I think next up, and it's probably, I don't even think it's close, and a lot of it's just because I think the aura is so situational. The Enforcer Captain, it is the same exact chassis as the Assault Captain, but you're replacing the melee loadout with laser rifles. And so, not bad. You know, the solid but situational order of remove a pin within 15 inches for non-vehicles can really be helpful for keeping your units moving and in the fight. So again, I don't think it's a bad order. It's just one of those where when I look at an order, I'm like, okay, could I see myself using this every turn? Could I see myself using this every other turn? You know, and so to me, I don't see myself using the Enforcer Captain order every other turn. I think most games I probably use it 2 to 3 turns at best. So if I'm only using it half the game, that's kind of how I weigh, do I want this order, do I not want this order? Firestorm, use it every turn. The Assault Enforcer Captain, I would use it effectively every turn. Maybe there's 1 or 2 where I don't, you know, board state depending, but that's an order I could see using every turn. So there's just, like, that's kind of how I weight the command orders is, would I use this every turn? Like I said, the retinue's kind of weird. Defenders are worth taking, even if it's just 1 for the armor bump. And then another orange command die. So very, very solid unit. Nothing wrong with taking it. And controlled fire, it gets to shoot when you charge it, etc. So again, it's there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing right with it. It's very middle of the road. It's like the beige of command units. Up next, I really had to put forward Observers and Pathfinders as a tie. And a lot of that is because, you know, they're both good, but they're both situationally good. The Pathfinder is solid as long as you're playing Pathfinders. But when it's by itself, it doesn't really do anything for the army. So, I mean, if you're just wanting to spend 50 points for another command die, maybe that's worth it to you. But to me, the Pathfinder requires too much list tailoring and is too situational to be higher on the list. Now, the FO has a great order, but it does require you to use a long action to steady aim in order to take advantage of it. And while this is good, it requires a more static playstyle to maximize. So that's not for me. So again, you might have had great success with it, and it might be very good, and maybe you just kind of put it next to a unit that you know isn't going to move. Like maybe you put it on the table specifically to buff like your missile launchers or something along those lines. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like I said, for me, I look at it and I'm like, this isn't me. I'm not a stand and shoot player. I'm a shoot, move, communicate, get into melee, right? So I'm constantly go, go, go. And that's why, to me, it can't really be any higher either, is because it's taking away from my play style and what I do well. So again, you may have better experience with it. I'm just saying, from the way I approach the game, it's just not for me. Now, the FO does bring 2 black dice, and the Pathfinder brings 1, so like they both bring command dice, and I think they both have their place. What puts them so low on the list, or the tier list to me, is just that they require a bit more list tailoring. You know, we look at the Peacekeeper, he buffs everything. We look at the Assault Enforcer Captain, he buffs everything. We look at the Enforcer Captain, it removes pin tokens from everything that isn't a vehicle. So all of these things affect most of your army. Whereas these really just require units to interact with them. Like they require specific units to interact with them. And that's more why they're so low. And arguably, I wouldn't even say that they're bad. It's just that they're situational. And that situational aspect is what keeps them from being higher. And then last we have the Jetbike Lieutenant. And honestly, I look at that thing and I think it's awful. I think it's a waste of points. It doesn't do almost anything for your army that you can't get somewhere else. The order is okay, but it is a 6-inch range. So like I said, like you're going to pop that order and then you're maybe going to sprint it at something so that you can double activate to kind of headstrong it in order to remove that pin token before, you see what I'm saying? Like you're going to, basically that's to me how you would use it, is like, oh, I'm going to pop this order. Now I'm going to move 18 inches so I could go be next to something. Then I'm going to spend a command point to double activate. And now I'm going to headstrong to remove its pin token. And that's a lot of hoops to jump through when you could either just deal with the pin token, or if it's not a vehicle, just use your Enforcer Captain who has a 15-inch range to remove pin tokens. So it's just a redundancy. And then it's just 90 points for a jet bike with 1 extra hit point and 2 black command dice. And that just, like I said, it just seems really expensive for what it does. Regular jet bikes are 45 points each. So I could just take 2 jet bikes for the cost of the lieutenant. I don't get headstrong and I don't get the black command dice, but I get 2 guns and I get 4 hit points. So I get more hit points and more shooting rather than a jet bike, right? Like that is situationally good. And oddly, when you look at the jet bike's retinue, like I said before, the fact that their jet bikes are 40 points instead of 45 when you add them onto the lieutenant still doesn't justify the cost here. I could take 1 lieutenant for 90 and then 2 jet bikes for 80. That's 170 points. I give it 7 hit points worth of jet bikes that can give out a 6-inch aura of headstrong. Cool. But really, for 45 points, right, I can take 4 jet bikes. That's 180. So for 10 points more, I can get 1 more jet bike. And then I can even spend 15 points more to give me a total of 25 points more than the lieutenant. But now it has a missile launcher. Or for 5 points more, it has a burst laser. So not only can I give them more bodies, more hit points, and more guns, I have gun options. You know, so again, I look at the Jetbike Lieutenant and I just fail to see, outside of like if you're playing some sort of themed, really cool army, I fail to see a purpose for it because it doesn't do anything that other units in your army don't do. And it's expensive. Like, if it were a little cheaper, sure, I could probably get behind it. But at its price, it just feels expensive for what you're getting out of it. Next episode, we're going to talk about specialist unit options, and then I will be doing a live stream, possibly today, probably Thursday morning-ish. We'll see. But that is going to do a list preview for my Veerman list for a tournament that is coming up, so we will talk about that. Again, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, I look forward to interacting with everybody in the comments. As always, you guys have a great day.